Dear Shuhail Mazrui, thank you for your time for our project. We are very grateful and honored to have you, to meet you today. Your story is very inspiring when at such a young age you're doing so many things for your country.
Thank you very much for your coming. It's such an honor and privilege to meet you.
What were your dreams and who did you want to become when you were a kid?
I've always wanted to serve the nation in any kind of shape and form, but I used to be fascinated by finance and economics. I loved markets. I loved learning about economies, GDPs, what makes a country more richer, wealthier than another country, what kind of resources are essential. Is it human capital? Is it the people? Is it a natural resource? And I studied finance because I always wanted to be an investment banker and work in the finance industry in Wall Street and be a bond trader.
Could you please tell us about your life before becoming a minister?
So I graduated from graduate school in Oxford and I studied public policy, but before that I studied finance and economics because I always wanted to work in finance. After I graduated, I directly worked at a sovereign wealth fund. So they focus on, in private equity specifically, which basically is how can you look at companies that are basically bankrupt and make them profitable. And it looks at investments. So it's a lot of private sector businesses, but it's using a lot of financial instruments to understand them and how can you use a sovereign wealth fund's money to invest in them in the long term.
What were you feeling at that point when you found out that you were one of the nominees from the 3 young men and 3 young women whom Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and Dubai's ruler, His Highness Sheikh bin Rashid Al Maktoum chose?
So I'll never forget, it was February 2016. I was still working in Abu Dhabi Investment Council at a sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi, and we were working on a huge deal on a leveraged buyout in private equity, and I got a phone call for an interview. I didn't know exactly for what. I wasn't fully kind of engaged in the public sector or government. I was focused a lot in finance and what's happening in the Financial Times and reading newspapers. I was really engrossed in that kind of work. And I got an interview and there was interesting questions. If we have time, I would love to tell you. And I left. And for me, it wasn't about a competition or should I be chosen or not. It was if God writes whatever kind of God writes for you, you should do it, whether it's in finance, whether it's in public policy. And I felt like no matter where I'll be, I just want to kind of put my whole heart into it. And when you put your whole heart into anything you do, you're always a winner somehow. And I feel, to be honest, honored and humbled to be chosen to help serve my country.
Did you face any difficulties in your first days of being a minister, and how did you overcome them?
I think we come from a country where you look at difficulties as an opportunity and you use it as a fuel to push you forward. This country was a desert. And now it is, to be honest, a heaven. You can't, sometimes people don't recognize it's in the MENA region or the Arab region. And it came not just because it had natural resource like oil. Look at so many other countries that are more wealthier than the UAE, but they haven't achieved what it has done. I think it takes a wise leadership and someone that looks at challenges as opportunities. So there's a lot of challenges we face no matter what job we take. And to be honest, I think I like challenges. They're hard, they're painful, but it makes you grow, it makes you develop and build.
Please, could you tell us about the 100-day program? How are the results and are you happy with it?
So after we got appointed, what was very interesting is His Highness wanted a 100-day plan. So what are you going to do to serve young people in the UAE, who are more than 50% of our population, between 15 to 30 years old? And some people even consider youth to 35 years old. And so what we did is we got so many youth from different emirates and sat with them and said, your youth in universities, your youth in schools, your youth who are working, your unemployed youth, your youth in the military, what do you need from government? How can we help translate your aspirations into policies, into initiatives? And so the 100-day plan was amazing because it didn't come from me. It came from so many youth around the nation. And it's when you do programs for people who want them and who need them, it's the best way to kind of design that kind of program, engagement with youth.
Please, could you tell us about the national strategy for youth and the action plan?
Yes. So the UAE government has a vision, Vision 2021, which is basically what the government wants to achieve by 2021. It wants to be one of the best top nations in the world. And it also has a strategy for Vision 2071. So our job was to say, okay, how can we design a strategy for youth? How do we want Emirati youth in the nation? And it's youth who live in the UAE, Emirati or not Emirati, whatever your nationality is. And we have 5 pillars. We want youth in the UAE to be engaged, to be contributing to society. We want them to be empowered. Let's say you want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be a singer, a writer. How can we help you reach your full potential? We want them to be healthy and safe, mental health and physical health. We want them to have an entrepreneurial spirit. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we want them all to be entrepreneurs, but we want them to have the spirit where they're nimble. Even if they work in civil service, they're quick, they're fast, they're adapting to the 4th Industrial Revolution, which is an interesting new kind of era we're entering with artificial intelligence, with climate change. Part of the strategy is how can you prepare young people for these interesting things that are happening in the world. Look at climate change, artificial intelligence, changing human modification, genetically modifying humans into superhumans. Last week, in fact, I saw someone who had an innovation where they had a chip in their body. A surgery was done where young people can use this chip to, it's basically a ticket to go to the train, and you just like have a barcode. You can pay with that chip and it's inside your body. It was a person from Finland. But it's these kinds of innovations. How can we let young people create them in the nation, create policies that enable them? Another aspect is responsible and stable. We want young people to be responsible individuals in society. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is how can they be stable? In the sense that we don't want young people to not have a purpose in life. We don't want young people to be terrorists. We want young people to contribute, be part of a family, a community, a nation.
Please could you tell us how to become a member of the Youth Council? Like, what are the responsibilities and what character traits should we have?
That's amazing. So we have so many youth councils, but the highest level of youth council is the Emirates Youth Council, and there are only 7 members chosen by the Ministry of Cabinet Affairs. And these 7 youth advise all ministers and the cabinet on youth affairs. So how are they chosen? So basically there's an online form that the cabinet every year announces, and any kind of youth in the whole nation can apply to it. But it's a rigorous process, an interview. They've had to have contributed to the nation. They've had to have very good grades, top quality youth, and who understand the work of government.
Is there like a project that you're thinking about the most?
Yes, we're working on a very interesting project called Youth Communities. So I'm sure in Kazakhstan you have the same. There's so many young people who have interesting passion. So let's say you love singing. How can I let you meet people in the UAE who meet singing? So we're creating communities and clusters. Young people who love reading, young people who love aerospace, young people who love to be entrepreneurs, young people who love even coffee, young people who are art collectors. So that project is how can you group young people from all the 7 Emirates together. So I have an app where I want to meet someone who's interested in fashion. I can see the list of youth who are in the fashion business, because through these networking, maybe I can partner with you. Maybe I can learn from you and you can learn from me. So how do you create these kinds of communities? Look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley wasn't created in close to San Francisco because it's special there. No, it was the people who created it. It's people and connections that can create Google or Apple. So how can you bring smart, talented, wise young people together?
Was there a moment when something didn't go the way that you planned, and how do you cope with it?
There's always, I think, things that happen in life that maybe wasn't as planned, but I realized that sometimes it's normal to have incredible curveballs. That's life. And you have to kind of appreciate it and understand that it's not going to be a perfect straight line. There's always bumps and downs, but acknowledging it and saying, you know what, today I'm not perfect, no one's perfect, but learning through it, which is very, very hard, I think is a skill that we all need to develop.
What are some of the best parts of being the Minister of State for Youth Affairs?
To be honest, I don't feel like the title is important. Our team, which I would love to introduce you, are all young people. We all do the same job. we're serving the nation. Whether you're a minister, whether you're an assistant manager, a project manager, at the end of the day, you are a civil servant. Your job is to serve the community. Maybe something that I love is that it made me connect. In finance, I was only looking at the return on equity, how much profits we made. And it was a job where at the desk and you're crunching financial models. It's great, you're serving the nation, but there isn't this human connection. Here, I've been able to meet people from all across the Emirates, from across the world, who are doing magnificent things. And I think this changed my life. Yesterday, so we're in charge of building the Special Olympics team. Do you know Special Olympics? Yeah. So it's the Olympics for people with intellectual disabilities who have so many different kinds. There's so many kinds of intellectual disabilities, but it's beautiful to connect with every kind of community in your nation, and how can you serve their families? How can you help them be athletes? And I think that's something I cherish and appreciate.
What do you do in your free time?
My free time. I love exercising. I love sports. I love reading. I love spending time with my grandparents, my aunts, and my family. I think we come from a culture and a tradition, even in our religion, where it's important to have time for your family. Just like your work, you have to spend time working, but you need to be in contact with all your family, your cousins, your far aunts. I think this kind of community where you care about your family anchors us all. Your support system is so important, so I like to spend that in my free time.
What advice would you give for the young generation?
Not that my advice is great, but I think it's so important for all of us to understand our purpose and to have faith in God, because in life, you have to earn everyone's respect. So you have to make, let's say, your professor or your teacher love you, right? Or your friend to like you, or your colleagues to like you. But there's one not person, but someone you don't have to earn their love, God. God loves us all, regardless of our color, our mistakes, and God is the most merciful. So how can we always continue to be forgiving just like God is? How can we be close to everything God taught us to do? How can we be faithful? At the end of the day, people forget that what you do is for God, not just for the people around you. And so being so faithful and truthful to what you do is so important.
I think your advice is great.
Thank you. That's awesome.
What are your plans for the future?
There's a lot of plans, personally and professionally. But professionally, I want to make sure that myself and the team I'm so cherished to work with, how can we continue to serve young people in the UAE? How can we build the best ecosystem of youth centers, which you're going to visit in a bit, our youth hub? How can we make sure all the projects we do serve young people of different kinds, whether it's marginalized youth, whether it's youth who are unengaged, whether it's youth who are engaged, whether it's the top youth, whether it's youth who are not really doing well in school, how can we help them? And so maybe for the future, it's how can we keep being better? And people mistake excellence all the time. People say, for you to be excellent, you have to compete and be better than someone next to you. That's not true. Excellence is being better than yourself every day. So if today you learned something, tomorrow you have to learn something better. And you have to be better than yourself, not compete with others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I answered every question.